of course, the changes we could do in the world, we have to think about what can we apply image processing to. So we work on the theory of image processing, how we do image processing, but at the end of the day, we also want to apply it to some real problems. And I can give you several examples from my own research projects. So for instance, one is I worked with a neurologist here on campus, and this neurologist specializes in Alzheimer's disease. And what he would like to do is he would like to take a certain kind of medical image called a PET image, positron emission tomography image, right? This kind of image shows brain metabolism. Parts of your brain that are active appear bright in this image. The parts that are not so active appear dim, okay? And so Alzheimer's patients, usually when you look at their PET images, the images will overall be not as bright as the normal people, okay, because their brain activity is diminished. And this will happen actually not in the general brain, but in certain specific portions of the brain that are known to be impacted by Alzheimer's disease. Okay. So now, how can we write a computer program, for instance, to assist a neurologist to do this diagnosis? Because for a neurologist to sort through a three-dimensional volume of a PET image is actually very time-consuming, and because of this, it's not widely adopted. But in working with this collaborator, we developed a computer program that can automatically classify, as I would say, a given image into whether it has Alzheimer's or not. So it does this automatically, and of course, it does it very fast with no additional workload for the neurologist. So in that way, if that finds its use into clinical use, it would be benefiting medicine. Now, of course, when we do something like that, we have to make sure we're doing things correctly. So we do go through additional tasks of what we call validation. We want to study and see how well are we performing. In this case, we found that, for instance, we were performing about at 95% accuracy, which is probably good enough. And then there's other examples of how this kind of research can impact our lives. My research is mostly focused on applications in medicine and biology. So another project I have is with neurobiologists who are interested in learning and studying how for instance, our brains are wired together. How do our brains work? And of course, our brains are made up of billions and billions of neurons, and there's certain types of neurons, category A, category B, and these are all wired to each other in certain patterns. Now, as a first step to understanding how the brain works is to figure out that connectivity. How is a neuron type A wired? Is it wired to B? Is it wired to C? And that's a very difficult question to answer because these neurons are tiny, tiny things, and you can't just, with your eyes, look at your brain and figure this out. So what my collaborators at the Moran Eye Center do is they work specifically on a portion of our visual system called retina, and they will take the retina and section it, slice it with a diamond knife into very thin sections, 50 nanometer thick sections, so a section that you can't even really see with your eye. And then they put this section under the electron microscope, and they take very high resolution images. And we're talking about terabytes of image, so very large, almost impossible to analyze manually. You can't load it into Photoshop and figure out where the neurons are and see how each is connected to each. So there, for instance, we're developing other algorithms which will take such images and trace automatically the different neurons in there and say, okay, this one is connected to that one is connected to this one. So try to answer that connectivity question, which neuron is connected to which, in an automatic way for the analysis of those images. So those are two examples from my research that how it applies to the real world. Of course, there's many other examples.
Yeah. So anyway, you also spoke about your